I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone. I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone. I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone. I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone, leave me alone.
Hey, Terry, I don't know if you were ever in a high school debate class, but the debate always began with resolved. And then the issue of the debate would then be addressed, like resolved. Federal tax should be reduced to 4% or whatever it was. Tonight, I would like to say resolved. Federal debates should be ended. That we should never have any. They have become so useless at this point. And last night's debate was 200% more useful. But when you multiply 200 times 0, it's still 0. Yeah. I watched it last night, and we're of course talking about the vice presidential debate between Kamala Harris, and Mike Pence, which they were both seated. Which I think that's a great idea. To have them both seated it was a good idea. I don't know if you remember the free-flowing wander about debate that happened back in 2016
with Trump hovering over Hillary's shoulder.
It was so weird. But even with all the adjustments and modifications that are happening to the debates, and I think Susan Page from USA Today did a better job than Chris Wallace. But again, 1,000,000 times 0 is still 0. I would argue that these things are pointless and should not happen anymore.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Everything that we've seen over the last couple of election cycles is completely wacky. I think everything that we've experienced as far as politics, social norms on that level has to be thrown out the window. I don't know if we just put an asterisk by the last 4 years, last 5 years, if we want to include the debates and the campaigns that led up to this, where we're at. Because, I mean, before that, I think the debates were somewhat decent. There was not this, I mean, at this point, it has become a full-on reality television, like Mean Girls, like Desperate Housewives of Atlanta, or whatever you might call it, because that's what it is. It's turned into entertainment television. There's
Real Housewives.
Yeah.
But
same thing. We might
both
combine them at this point. Put them together, because there is nothing more than entertainment value to be derived from these debates now. There's nobody that's going to watch that and be like, oh, so that's your stance on foreign trade. I feel swayed now. I didn't know that before. Or this is how you feel about police reform, or whatever it might be. That is the issue at hand. That might have been the issue at hand 8 years ago.
But it's like one of those. I feel like we're in this momentary where it's a weird comparison, but it's a post 9/11 airport security moment where things get changed forever and then never go back. And I think that that's the way that debates are, because that's the way that debate is now. It's insults, it's interrupting, it's you're perceived as more powerful if you ignore the rules, which I never joined the high school debate club, but I did participate in a few high school debates. And it was like, if you violated the rules, that gave points to the other team. And then as I grew older and saw people like, Bill O'Reilly have, and all the cable news pundits basically shout their opinions over whatever guest they had on, and they didn't like what the guest was saying back, they just shut the mic off. It's just, I think that's now what debate is, and it's not helpful. And last night was not as embarrassing, I think, for the country as Tuesday was, but unless, and this was proposed, unless we have someone like Joe Rogan. And I'm not saying Joe Rogan has to be the person, but someone who doesn't have to uphold their credentials, but are still, relatively unbiased. Like Susan Page is a journalist. She can't say, I said, thank you, Mr. Vice President, because that's my polite debate way of saying, shut up. Right. If we could just have someone in there being like, no, you're done. Or this was the other idea I had today, Terry. What if we had this, like, just cute as a button 12-year-old moderate the debates. And they have the questions. They obviously don't come up with the questions, but you're not going to you're not going to ignore a plink plink like they bat their eyes and say, "Can you please stop talking now?" If you talk over them, then you sound like the utmost of bullies.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what they're going for right now. That's what's winning the ticket right now. That's what's getting the most attention. That's what's getting 60 million people to tune in. So maybe they might bully a little girl. That's the thing when you talk about. I'm seriously like, if the things that I've seen over the last 4 to 5 years, I never thought I would have seen in my lifetime. Like I thought, like I didn't always have the most respect for our system of government. I didn't always have the most respect for neither side, really. You know what I'm saying? Just because of the Black experience in America, we didn't necessarily trust anybody. But
right,
at least I always expected them to fall in line and play in a certain parameter. Like, we're not going to step outside of our norms, our traditions, and all that has been thrown out the window. So
totally out the window.
So when people say stuff like we should have Joe Rogan in there, I think having Joe Rogan would make an even bigger shitstorm, because I think now Joe Rogan, you're not going to talk over Joe Rogan, right? Because he's the kind of guy that will step up and tell you to shut the hell up. Getting going. But then now, can you imagine Joe Rogan telling Donald Trump to shut the hell up?
I think I kind of think that he might, just because
there's nobody.
He's got nothing to lose. Like, Susan Page has a job to lose. Chris Wallace is on Fox News. He has everything to lose, and still yet he's being called out for his supposed partisanship. Joe Rogan lives in his weird ranch in Texas, and people visit him and chat for 2.5 hours. And Spotify just paid him $100 million for his podcast. Like, he's beholden to no one.
I get that.
Yeah, so I think that being that if you don't know who Joe Rogan is, he's the most successful podcaster of all time. Like I just mentioned, he sold his podcast like to Spotify for $100 million, which the second most valuable podcast is like 18,000. Like he's that much bigger than the next person, and I've never really understood his success that much. Other than he does get tremendous guests in, but he would, I think, because he is independently wealthy at this point, and then he's independent in terms of his allegiance to anybody, might step in and make for something, now that I feel like the logistics of a debate have changed, something that would actually be worth watching, or at least would would end the worship of the two people on stage, because last night's reaction was pretty predictable. If you liked Kamala, which I do, she won, and if you like Vice President Pence, then I don't, but I could see how you could defend that he won too. These are just
the bar is so low.
And futility.
The bar is so low right now, especially for Mike Pence. When you look at what happened a couple of weeks ago with the presidential debate, or with the way his boss, Donald, behaved, I think, the bar, where does the bar? Like, we're in limbo right now. How low can you go?
How low can you go?
Yeah, that's about the size of it. So, I mean,
there's no answer.
Yeah. And that's why I said Joe Rogan. I mean, I get it. He's not beholden to anyone. He's financially independent. He really he would have nothing to lose. But I just think like in an instance where it was Trump involved in a debate, he's so incorrigible that I don't think there's anybody on the planet that could make him stop talking when he doesn't want to stop talking.
But maybe you're probably right. I mean, we've seen instances of that where clearly all of his staffers have told him, please don't say this thing, and then he says this thing. So if he wants to say it, he's going to say it. But I guess what I could expect from a moderator like Rogan would be to make him feel dumber for saying it, instead of making it feel like the moderator's being biased for preventing him from saying it. I guess that's what it is.
Giving the image or the appearance of unbiased because he's not beholden to anyone. He doesn't care.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't even care about his integrity, really.
Yeah, he does some wild stuff. I don't know. Like a couple of times, like I'll tell you just real quick. So I've listened to a couple of his shows in the past, right? And then I think it was right around the time when we were deep into the COVID quarantine. And I was like, man, I'm trying to find stuff to do. And I wanted to listen to one of his podcasts. And I was just, I was trying to find stuff to occupy my mind. I don't want to, so I said, let me listen to Joe Rogan. He's the top podcaster. I might as well try to get some ideas and see what he's doing. And he was talking about like licking frogs, like getting high, doing all those, he's an experimental. He experiments with different substances, like acid and stuff like that. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm ready for this. Like, I don't know. Like him and his guests were going deep into it. Like,
well, he has his normal show, and it's a weird thing because I listened to his entire show today for the first time in a long time, and it wasn't because I like Joe Rogan; it's because I love his guest, who was Colin Quinn, and they just sort of have this rambling. I mean, I say rambling because there's just several topics injected into the 2.5 hours that they spoke. Of course, Colin Quinn is incessantly brilliant, but there was really no point to it. But I get why people like it because every 30 minutes, Joe Rogan will weirdly inject like, yeah, but you can't say this anymore because of the PC police. And I think that's like why he's got this huge, massive audience, is that he's become this sort of anti-woke symbol where it's like, well, we used to be able to laugh at each other's differences. Now they just cause us to be fearful of one another. And of course, he's like a very pro-cancel culture advocate, or not advocate, but believer of. And it was weird. They would be in the midst of this, like, and again, this is the most time I've spent with Joe Rogan in a long time. They would be in the midst of this sort of interesting conversation about what comedy looks like in 2020, especially in New York City, where the city has been shut down since the beginning of the pandemic. And then Rogan will just bring up like, yeah, but it would be shut down anyway because of PC culture or whatever. But that gives the reason I'm bringing that up is that gives some sort of credibility amongst both sort of middle left-leaning and middle right-leaning groups, which are the only ones who really ever get swayed by these debates. And it's always astounding to me that people go into a debate like, I'm not sure, because more than any other country, we vet candidates like crazy. Like Canada, it's like 8 weeks and then bam, election. Here it's like it's a year and a half. But I think that would be interesting to see the backlash or how people would try to have a backlash after him moderating a debate. I don't know. I just think everything's different now. Let's just try another different thing. Yeah. Like it's very predictable to have someone like Chris Wallace or Susan Page, but why not try a Joe Rogan debate? Why not do it?
Well, let me ask you this before we get off the debate subject. I think we kind of touched it a little bit, but I'm really curious to know like how many people out there are really just so undecided at this point that watching a debate pushes you over the edge one way or the other. Like, oh, okay, and they really made some great points in that discussion last night. When he dropped that zinger about plagiarism, that really got me, because Sleepy Joe was guilty of plagiarism back in the 70s.
What a horrible crime.
Yeah, like who watches the debate other than other than for entertainment value or to reinforce your already established beliefs?
I think at this point, at least in this year, the only way you're going to get swayed to vote for one candidate or the other is how their supporters behave. And I'm going to use an example of a man named Ken Bone. I don't know if you remember him, Terry, from 2016.
I do know who that is.
The goofy-looking guy with the red sweater.
Yeah.
Who was
Hockey Night in Canada.
Yeah. No. At the 2016 debates.
Oh, wait.
You're thinking of Don Cherry.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Don Cherry. My bad. My bad. Yeah.
By the way, I love that you know who Don Cherry is.
My bad. Yeah. Of course.
But Ken Bone was like this. He was the true model of weird internet fame. God, I can't even remember which candidate he asked the question. I think it was both of them. It was one of those debates where they let the people in the audience ask a question, and Ken Bone got up, and his name is Ken Bone, which is a funny name.
There you have it.
And then he was just a weird looking guy. Like, look him up on your phone.
I'm about to.
He's just a strange looking guy. And then yesterday he was tweeting about he ended up actually voting for Hillary Clinton in 2016 and was still a little bit undecided. And then the right was like, hey, here's our guy. You voted for Clinton in 2016, vote for Trump this time. And the left was like, to hell with you, Ken Bone. And I kind of feel like that's always how the left behaves. That's always how we behave. Like if someone didn't act perfectly in their past, then we cast them out forever, for all times. Yeah,
when I saw the picture, it came back.
Remember Ken Bone? Yeah,
I remember Ken Bone now. Yep. I don't know, man. The whole, like you said, the debate thing. I don't know if they need to do away with it, or if they need to just change the format, or change the moderator, or
maybe and they are more boring. But the town halls, if you could truly set it up where you could find these undecided voters, and that's always difficult because Biden had a town hall on Monday, and they said it was undecided voters, but a lot of them turned out to be pretty much decidedly anti-Trump. But I think it would be a lot more effective if you could truly have undecided voters in a town hall setting with just one candidate, and a moderator's only job would be to throw it to those different voters to ask a question. Because a candidate is not going to yell at a voter the same way that they're going to yell at each other.
Right.
I think that would be a lot more effective.
It might be. I think so. One of the things I think would be more effective too is if you got a moderator, and if the time limit, like if it's a 90-minute show, I understand you have to time it and make everything equal and fit inside the network parameters and whatnot. But one of the things that really pissed me off about last night was the moderator would ask a question, and then the candidate would answer whatever question it was they wanted to answer, like had nothing at all to do with that thing I just asked you. Like, I got to be able to stop you as a moderator. I got to be able to stop you from talking now and answer what I ask you first. And then if you feel like getting to it, then get to whatever you're about to say. But I asked you a question, you asked me, you answered something completely different.
And I don't know why, because there's a natural flow to conversations, right, Terry? Like when we sign off tonight, we'll say, see you later. And if we didn't, it would feel weird. Yeah. Just like if I said, hey, Terry, what'd you have for breakfast today? And you were like, before I get to that question, let me just talk about how much I hate mowing the lawn. Like it's weird that politicians, if it's a question that you don't want to answer, like, did you sleep with that girl? And you're like, before I get to that. But it's such a turnoff to me when a politician refers to the previous question. I hate that shit. Yeah. And I feel like most people do. And I don't know why their politicians are advised to continually not necessarily dodge a question, but like readdress a previous question, because we're all used to a normal flow, linear fashion of a conversation. And when you suddenly go back to the previous question, and it was funny. There was one instance on Twitter last night where someone was like, oh, just in case you were wondering, this question was about climate change. And I was like, I'm glad you reminded me.
Because I forgot. Because now it's been 2.5 minutes
of whoever addressing whatever issue that they want to. And and this is not a conservative progressive issue. It's just like when the moderator has said those 10 minutes are up and we're moving on to a new topic, go with that.
Go with it.
Because just like we forgot the question that was asked 2.5 minutes ago, like we've forgotten the previous topic. So just dominate the new topic.
We've moved on. Yeah. It's a new round.
We've all moved on. Exactly.
It's a new round. Yeah, you don't get to go box the last round again. You got to move on to the next round.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Imagine the boxer being like, "I would like to address a punch from round 5."
It was wide open in
Yeah.
the second round, and I didn't swing.
Right, and yes, but I'd like to point out my opponent's records of not punching when they had a wide open swing in the 5th round. Yeah, but let's talk about it. Let's evaluate, because we should, and you always have to declare a winner or loser, I suppose. I guess I had never seen Kamala Harris in a one-on-one debate, because I don't live in California. And she had always, obviously she was on the primary stage, but at that point it was clear that Joe Biden was the leader, the front runner, and one of her primary goals was just to try to take him down. And it didn't work, but I just remember she was very, very soundbitey, because that's how you have to be when someone has a massive amount of support and you're trying to punch up instead of, punch down. And last night I thought, like, this is just going to be a bloodbath. Like, I don't know what Mike Pence's voice even sounds like, and then she I have to say, for me, the second half of the debate, I feel like she definitely did a much, much better job. But I don't know, like I was hoping that would be the throttling, where she would just humiliate Mike Pence, and maybe that's putting too much expectation on her, and maybe she debated just as she should have. But I was expecting to be overwhelmed, and instead I was just whelmed.
Well, I think I just whelmed.
Yeah.
I think there was a couple things at play last night. One, I think that she probably had a case of the jitters in the beginning. Just imagine, you're on a stage in front of 60 million people now, debating someone trying to be the vice president of the United States of America, the second in line to lead the free world. I think maybe all of that, maybe I was just imagining myself in that situation, like thinking, leading up my entire life to this moment, like how much pressure that would be, how much excitement that would be, how much, fear that would be. That's a lot to swallow at one sitting. And then Mike Pence is not, he's not an unskilled politician, for two.
Certainly not. No.
He's been around the block a couple times. And then for three, this is one thing that a lot of people may not necessarily take into consideration unless you fall into these footsteps. I think she was concerned about coming off as the angry Black woman.
I read a lot of that today.
And that is something that is a very real thing for Black women, and women in particular, but especially Black women. We saw what happened to Hillary Clinton. If you think about it, Hillary Rodham Clinton was probably the most qualified presidential candidate we've seen in our lifetime. As far as her history, her work experience, her resume, everything that she's done in her career, the most. But the only thing that we heard about her was she is such a bitch. I can't stand to hear her voice. Can you imagine hearing her voice for the next 8 years and this, that, and the third? And ultimately, I'm sure that probably cost her votes, even though she won by 3 million.
She won the popular vote, and we are going to get into that. But also, when you accrue experience, and I think Donald Trump is a great example of this. You accrue baggage, and a lot of Hillary Clinton's experience also, in a lot of people's minds, was baggage. And Bill Clinton doesn't really help situations either. And then there's the whole Jill Stein thing. Jesus, Jill Stein. I hate you, Jill Stein.
She was at the table with Putin, wasn't she?
Oh God, Jill Stein. You're right. There was an enthusiasm gap between Trump voters, I think, and Clinton voters. And there are a lot of people who have hated. Like, the hate for Hillary Clinton goes back such a long time. Back to essentially when her husband Bill rose to prominence like that. She has been a public figure. It's not like we had to find out who she was over the course of a few years. She was just right along there with him, and then she was in the news for, in a lot of minds, so many negative things when it came to Benghazi or whatever. Like, I wonder if she had not taken that Secretary of State job, if things had gotten, if things would have gone better for her, because there's so many conservative minds that will never forget that, taken completely out of context Benghazi quote, like, what does it matter? Which is, if you read the whole quote, like, it was kind of an appropriate thing to say, but that's all that they take out of it.
Right.
And then, Joe Biden's kind of in the same situation where we are learning. I mean, if you pretended you knew who Kamala Harris was 3 years ago, you either live in California, you were arrested by her, or or you're just you are the most insanely into politics person ever. But that was the reaction. So last night, my reaction was, Kamala. I thought I was hoping that Kamala would do better, but I see now that your point, that there is that perception that is always in the back of the minds of women, and especially Black women, as being this, hysterical, finger waving, lunatic, and
emotional.
Maybe she was
emotional,
purposely muted.
Yeah, I would almost guarantee that was part of her debate strategy, part of her coaching as she went through the training for this debate, was that try to keep your emotions in check. And it's crazy the things that you have to do, to try to please the electorate, or trying to, not make certain demographics angry or whatnot. And even though she probably did that, I saw on social media today, people still said it. Like, she was so emotional. I couldn't believe it. She couldn't keep her emotions in check. Her facial expressions were just, my God. We saw all of her teeth. Oh, she was like, literally, like.
I saw the same thing.
So,
yeah. I mean, to criticize facial expressions, that's, and then the final point that I want to make on the debate, the reason, weirdly, that our Democratic nominee has sold, I think, like 30,000 fly swatters today. A fly just landed on Mike Pence's head, which is usually like something you notice. Actually, before we get to that, I feel like Mike Pence's hair is cut with the same things that trim putting greens. I was staring at his hair last night, and I'm like, it's so close to being shaved, but it's not quite shaved. But it's like there's no setting that gets it that close, right? So it has to be like a mini version of a putting green trimmer.
I'm gonna tell you what. I got somebody sent a text message last night. It said he has Lego hair.
Yes, you're right. That's exactly what he has. He has Lego hair. And it was distracting me the whole night, because I don't know if I wanted my hair to look like that. Like, what would I ask the barber to do? I feel like I'd have to go to, Bill Murray and Caddyshack and do this. But yeah, and a fly, I'm thinking of Caddyshack again, Jesus. A fly landed on his head for 2 minutes. And I remember I saw it probably like 10 seconds in. I'm like, is he going to swat at that, or would that? And then what felt like half an hour, that thing stayed, which is, it was only 2 minutes. Someone timed it. But it did stay there for 2 minutes.
Oh, I had so many thoughts. Because, like, again, I saw it when it first happened, right?
Right.
And I was like, nah, there's no way that's a fly. And then I was like, that's a fly. And here's the crazy thing. Like, it stayed in the same spot. Like,
I know. But you know how antsy flies are. You don't have to do much to get a fly to move.
Like, if you go like this, usually a fly's gonna, like, he's talking, he's doing this and this, turning his head.
Yeah,
there he is.
It's not like he sat totally still. But for some reason, the flies just clung to his putting green hair, and it's like become my favorite. It's my favorite. And then you have to know that and I feel like every campaign should do this. Hire like 6 comedians, not as advisors, but if you're going to respond to a certain situation, because more often than not, a joke about something is better than a condemnation or a repudiation or whatever. A joke about the fly that the Biden campaign put out like almost in real time, which is crazy. Like, why is Joe Biden so close to a fly swatter?
Where did you get the fly swatter?
I don't know.
Where? Why does Joe Biden have is that just something they have like in DC, like fly swatters hanging out?
I've never owned a fly swatter. Like, if your fly problem is that bad, then I would go right to the strips. It seems like it's for hunters that don't like have the heart to shoot a deer. Like they'll swat flies though and get that satisfaction out of it. So it was this amazing 2 minutes of television. And obviously Kamala didn't see it, because the only thing that I wish had happened is if she had turned to him and looked through the 12 feet and the 2 layers of plexiglass and said, "Mr. Vice President, there's a fly in your head. I don't know if you
I swear I was going to ask you today. I was thinking about this all day. I was going to ask Zach, like, what is the proper etiquette for telling someone they have a fly on the now? It's like whether you're on, just hanging out with your buddy or you're on a date or you're in front of 60 million people. How do you like?
It's kind of like the food in the teeth thing, right? Like to point it out. I don't know if there is etiquette, because again, this is an unprecedented amount of time for a fly to spend on somebody's head. Like Guinness has to be next to the fat motorcycle twins and the guy's long fingernails. Like this is going to be a world record of flies time spent on somebody's head.
Hey, all he needed was like a big ass saltine cracker, and I was ready to send him like 25 cents a day and a bag of rice.
Yeah.
You can save Mike Pence.
Yes. I haven't seen one of those commercials in such a long time. You can see why, Terry, like our perception of Black people is so distorted by commercials like that.
I'm saying, right?
Yeah, like it's just Jesus. All he needs is a bag of rice.
That's it.
It was it. 25 cents for the less than the cost of a cup of coffee.
You could.
It was Sally Struthers. Sally Struthers, who was
Sally Struthers was the main one. I'm trying to think of the song in my head.
Oh no! You're thinking of Sarah McLachlan, right?
Sarah McLachlan.
That's the beaten down dogs commercial, which are always 2.5 minutes long.
Yes.
And like it just goes from one shot to the other of just dogs with like one eye.
Can I tell you something? I want to be completely honest with you. I need to be completely transparent with you and everyone who's here with us. I turned the channel
Immediately.
I'm sorry. I can't
handle it.
I'll break down.
Yeah.
I can't watch it.
And I always figure like, well, the dogs in the commercials are probably okay. Because there's no way that they're just like, look at this dog. Sure. That shit is suffering. Oh, get some good footage, and then they just leave it there. If they do, I shouldn't donate to their foundation. I think it's probably the ASPCA or something. I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, But have you ever done this where you flip away, and again, these commercials are long, and then flip back, and it's just like a dog whose face is just bleeding.
Yes.
Surrounded by dead puppies. It's just
I can't look, man.
I can't
look. I can't do it.
I can't. No, I immediately turn.
And it's I can't look because not because I'm an asshole, but just because I think it's quite the opposite.
I can't.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up Mayor Pete today, who thank God has that nickname, because I have flubbed his last name for 300 days straight, and I'll never get it.
Time out before you finish. if he's good, if he has been good for nothing over the last 4.5 years, 5 years, Donald Trump helped me figure out how to say this guy's last name. Donald Trump. I listened to Donald Trump mock his name enough times.
Yeah.
Boot Ed Edge? Boot Ed Edge? What is that? Boot Ed Edge?
It's a great argument. I'm using a fake last name right now, and I'm doing it for the exact same reason he should have had a fake last name for the beginning, like instead of Mayor Pete Buttigieg, Mayor Pete Solomon, Mayor Pete President Man, like whatever. And I always thought he was a very impressive person on the primary stage, like. But not in the way that sort of resonates. Like he knows history really well. And I remember once he made this Walter Mondale reference, and I'm like, I love that, but that is not that no one is
talking with everyone.
But he's a Democrat that has been making the rounds on Fox News, and Bill Maher has been imploring Democrats to do this forever. President Obama constantly just refused. I've yet to see Joe Biden on Fox News. But Mayor Pete has made a couple of appearances the last couple of days. And right now, he's the top trending topic in not only Seattle, but in the country. Because he went on there and they threw questions at him. But he's smart. He's well prepared. He's a veteran. And just completely took them down one by one. And it's like, this is what every Democrat should do to avoid it. And I understand Chris Wallace is from Fox News, but to avoid a channel that 5 million people watch a night, it seems dumb. And if we don't have candidates that are good enough or believe enough in what they have to say to go on and be challenged, which they will, I would argue overall pretty weakly, but then they shouldn't be candidates. And I was thrilled to see Mayor Pete today go on, and it wasn't just yesterday and today, go on not once, but twice, and leave the hosts speechless. Like there was this noticeable gap between them, like his last answer and their next question. Cause they're like, geez, this guy's good.
Yeah.
And
well, maybe
one of those things like, man, what if he had been the nominee? What if he had been on there? What if he had been on there with Donald Trump and try to have Donald Trump bring up any sort of law and order debate, or the dude went to Iraq, like he doesn't have any of the baggage that Joe Biden does. He's not even 47, so you couldn't even bring out the 47 years of doing nothing type rhetoric. Man, I wish we had looked more deeply into that dude.
Yeah, but you know how it is, especially in the primaries. A lot of times it turns into either a popularity contest for one, two, who has the most reach as far as marketability, who can go out there and sell themselves to the most people at a specific point in time. And those early states were really important. Those early states knocked a couple of people out. As if you don't remember, anybody that's out there watching, Joe, if it weren't, if we just took in the early states, Joe Biden was not going to be here.
No, he kind of had a turnaround. Yeah,
he had a turnaround. So it's a weird thing. Like politics is really weird, man. If you don't know yet, it's not always the best candidate that gets nominated, right? It's not always the person with the best ideas. It's not always the person who has, the goals of uniting the country and putting things back in order that gets nominated. Sometimes it's who has the most money, who can win the popularity contest, who's the better marketer, who has the better strategy when it comes to campaigning. And that was it.
It's very rare that someone emerges from nowhere. And the only example in my lifetime, I have two, and they're both Democrats. I mean, Bill Clinton came from nowhere, and Barack Obama came from nowhere. But that rarely happens. It comes down to name recognition first and foremost. And we all know Joe Biden's name, just like everybody knew John McCain's name in 2008. And especially when you get to the southern states where they're not pounded with news nearly as much. They see a name that they know, and that's who they plug in. And that's why Biden. And then that compounded with the the fact that no one could pronounce pizza.
Buttigieg.
Yeah,
Buttigieg.
Buttigieg. It's such a dumb name. I mean, you should just change it because it's a dumb name. What kind of family would just allow their history to be defined by a name that one in maybe two Americans can actually pronounce?
I know it's weird. Like, here's the thing. Have you ever? There's a couple of names that you think of. Like, so I've never met a person in my life. I've been a lot of places around the world. I've never met a Buttigieg. I've never met a Buttigieg. Never, not one. Like, not even. No, not one.
No.
But then again, I've never met. And this is another thing. I've talked about this in the past with some associates of mine, and this will be interesting to see moving forward. But I've never met a Trump before. Mm-hmm. But my question to you, Zach, and this is something I've asked myself, I've asked a couple of my associates in the past, like, after this is all said and done, and after everything comes out in the wash, because I feel like, especially if he doesn't get reelected, there's going to be some stuff. Some stuff is going to hit the fan, and a lot of stuff from his history is going to be brought up. Will the name Trump fall in line with other names that you don't want to be associated with, like his ancestors from here on out? Like the way you don't meet anybody with the last name Hitler anymore. Like,
right.
If you got somebody with the last name Hitler right now, you'd be like, what? There
used to be 6 Hitlers, New Jersey. Yeah.
And they probably had the worst.
They didn't have a good experience. I don't. It's never going to get to that point. I think, and I don't. I can't imagine them even rebranding what happens going forward, just because they've had 35 years. You know, if you go back to his dad, 50 years of successful Trump branding, that I can't imagine that they would. And the dude, you know, people call him a loser or whatever. He won the presidency. Like, there's only been 45 people in the world, or not even 45 people. There's been 30 some,
right,
or 45. Yeah, there are 45 that have ever done that in the history of our nation, and that's like really impressive, you know. So even if there happens to be any sort of charges that come up after the election, which I don't really think that they would be, and honestly, for the sake of peace, if there are, this is Biden should pardon him.
Really?
For the sake of,
can
you imagine the unrest? I want this country to get back to a point where we fought about an issue at a time, not just how much, like everything. You know, right now we're fighting, and issues are almost secondary. We're in this camp or this other camp. I mean, can you imagine if the Southern District of New York finds him guilty or decides to prosecute him for tax fraud? And I'm not an expert. I don't know exactly what Biden could pardon him from. That's probably a state case. But whatever it is, that to his fullest extent, I think that Biden, for the good of our nation going forward, should pardon him from as much as he possibly can, if that actually happens.
I honestly believe that there are charges coming down the pike if he is not reelected that is going to put him in prison for the rest of his life. You think he's already, what is he, what's the term they use for him in the Cohen case? Something one.
Oh, yeah, witness one or something.
Like, not even witness.
No, not witness. Yeah.
He's a co-conspirator. He's a co-conspirator in a felony where a man was sent to prison for 4 years based on doing something that he ordered him to do. How is that not prosecutable? That's an open and shut case.
It's definitely prosecutable, but
that's just one. They barred this.
I would prefer that he doesn't get prosecuted for it.
I know. I understand you prefer that, but that's just one. Mueller already said that he was guilty of obstruction. They just could not prosecute him because he was the president of the United States. Right. That was said in the Mueller report. There's no denying that. Those are all prosecutable things, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even tipped into the tax evasion and fraud.
Yeah, it's concerning, obviously, when one of his sons said back in 2016, I believe, like, well, we get all the money we need from the Russians. Like, that's Eric Trump's just
Fredo? You mean Fredo?
he's a ding-a-ling.
Fredo?
He's I guarantee
Old man
you,
Roth always brings us down here.
his dad doesn't like him. Like, I know that for a fact. And the only thing he's ever wanted his entire life is for his dad to love him. But yeah, I don't think, because then, one, he's not a danger to anyone, which is how I would like to see prison going forward. Like, are you truly a danger to society, or can we figure out some other punishment for you? Because prison just leads to more prison in a lot of cases. Yes, I understand why you're smirking.
How many people do we say are not a danger to society? Like, like a million people who are prosecuted daily.
Yeah,
who have never been a threat to society.
And Michael Cohen's not really a threat to society. Was Michael Vick ever really a threat to society? I mean, if you're a pop, maybe, but
yeah. I mean,
was prison the right solution for that? Probably. I just think the image for millions and millions of Americans, because they're not going to trust the legal process whatsoever if he ever gets convicted of anything. They wouldn't trust any sort of process.
30 to 40% of Americans.
But that's a lot. You're talking about that's 100 million Americans at that point. Well, I mean, not a voting age, but to see him go through that trial, I don't know, just wouldn't be. I think a better punishment would be for him. And I think what would hit him harder than anything is he's just not getting the attention he used to. I think that's
as an ex-president. Here's the thing, though. Even if he does not win this reelection, and even if we go through this entire process where he litigates it to the bitter end, and he is not elected, he is still not going to go quietly into the night. I think we're going to have the next evolution of Donald Trump. I think he's going to find a way to monetize his ex-presidency. He's going to be the way other presidents disappear into the darkness. Trump is not going to do that.
No, probably
not. The imagination.
But I don't know. There is a lot of his persona attached to the fact that he sits in the Oval Office, because he's not saying anything different than he had since he's been on Twitter and since I've heard him speak. And he was always just sort of this ancillary character. People would have him on because, again, he delivers a good soundbite. I mean, Howard Stern used to have him on constantly. And he would come on, he would just give a fun, entertaining interview. If he just evolves back into that character, I'm fine with that, where it's like, oh, he pops up in a gossip section, or he does another interview on Stern or whatever. Then I'm okay with that. That's like, if that's what his role is reduced to and nothing more, then okay. Because at that point, he wasn't particularly destructive. If anything, his birtherism, I think, gave Obama a second term, and he's not going to get another TV show, so we'll hear from him less and less. And at that point, you'll kind of have the choice whether or not you want to hear from him. Now he's the president, so if you want to know what's happening in your country, you kind of have to tune in. But if he's not the president, then you can just click on follow on Twitter and never read anything he's ever written again.
And see, that's where I think it's all going to go sideways, because he is not going to go. He's not going to fall back into that old category of Donald Trump that would appear from time to time on Howard Stern, that would come and show up and do these whatever one-offs and be quirky and witty and whatever. He is going to use his platform as the former president Donald Trump, 45, and he's still going to have the followers on Twitter. He's still going to have the cult that flies the flags, the guys that, Trump everything, Trump 2024, he's still going to be commentating on the next president's behaviors and actions and whatever happens. He's still probably going to be talking about Obama, what Obama did. We still haven't overturned the Obama. Think about this. We are in 2020. We are 4 years removed from him being elected as president of the United States. Today, he is talking about Hillary's emails.
Yeah. But it's his greatest hits. It's like why Journey starts with "Don't Stop Believing." You know, it's that's what won him. When you're faced with something like, because the biggest takeaway that I had from last night's debate and the debate before, somebody pointed this out, is let's say that I was making a case to remain the head coach of a football team. I would point out all the reasons that I should remain head coach. I would not talk about the guy that maybe you were replacing me exclusively with about his failures, like exclusively.
Right.
And I think that's kind of revealed. And, you know, we're seeing poll numbers open up to the point where it's like, this isn't even Hillary territory. This is like going to be a landslide. When you're seeing seniors turn their back on him in Florida, like that's unprecedented. So his only thing to do now is, well, let's revisit some of the issues that won me the election in 2016. Hillary's emails, lock her up, man. Lock her up got him into the White House. That was, and the guy who started the chant now has been arrested and charged. It's Michael Flynn.
We're going to be locked up.
So yeah, go back to all that stuff. Go back to everything that he said immediately, almost after he came down the escalator to announce his candidacy. That's all he has to really run on. I mean, look at our world right now. It's tough to pray. It's tough to that and promise a vaccine. That's the only other thing too.
Yeah.
Because now the only, and my brother texted me about this yesterday, and it was an interesting point, is that I thought, and this selfishly would have been fine with me, his last-ditch attempt to perhaps win would have been to introduce a new stimulus package, like give us all money,
right?
Which is
Who
very
doesn't love that?
No, right. And he called off all negotiations till after the election. So
there's that.
I don't. Yeah, he just the things that he has to put forth in terms of why you want another 4 years of this are just getting smaller and smaller. And the most damning thing is that, because I follow a lot of Wall Street analysts, and this is when I knew Obama was going to win, when they start just factoring in what a new presidency is going to look like. Like, here's what the new tax rates, here's the new corporate tax rates are going to look like. Wall Street has already done that. And once I saw that happen in 2008, and then it was pretty close in 2012 for a little while, until Hurricane Sandy and the 47% comments made by Mitt Romney. Once they do that, Wall Street is a really great indicator of who is going to win the next election. Mm-hmm. And being that they're already preparing for what a Biden administration, and let's face it, like 2 years, probably a Harris administration. Looks like.
It's so morbid, man. Cynical and morbid.
I hope it's more a 25th Amendment issue. And but whatever.
I'm gonna tell you real quick. The thing that, and at the end of the day, and people will say they're not on fire for Biden, and it's the lesser of two evils when they make that choice. The one thing I will say that I have faith in about Joe Biden above Donald Trump and what he's done is that I think that he will have a supporting cast that is qualified, that is experienced, and that could step right in if everything went to hell in a handbasket. I think Joe Biden is smart enough to know that he's not that smart, whereas Trump thought he was the smartest guy in the room at every room he's in.
And in this year where I feel like everyone's had a breakdown, I've seen Joe Biden break down. And he's not my ideal candidate, I've never lost any sort of respect or admiration of the life that he's lived. He's been a tremendous person and gone through, tremendous or horrific.
You wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy.
Horrific, tragedies to overcome. And when I see him address Bo, or I mean, his first wife like died as soon as he got into Senate, and he rebuilt everything. And I know that he stutters and he's had a million gaffes. My favorite that I still watch, like once every 3 months, he was honoring some veteran who was in a wheelchair, and he was like, "Stand up, let everybody clap." Yeah, it's a great one. All right, but it didn't come from a place of cruelty. It came from a place of, oh wow. But he's probably said 2 billion words in the public eye at this point, and sometimes he does that. So what? We are. No one is as eloquent as they think they are, and like I just there was one moment when he addressed. This was after the BP spill in the Gulf of Mexico, if you remember that, when that seemed like, wow, we couldn't possibly have a worse disaster. But and he spoke about why we needed to have more aid for the farmers and those who were in the seafood industry. And you should look it up. Like it's 2.5 minutes of most eloquent, and yeah, I mean, I'm saying eloquent, like compassionate instances that I've ever seen a politician have. Like you can tell that he truly is like upset by he's upset by what's happened to these people by this corporation that is not tended to its own safety measures. And then the other thing, remember, like, if you don't think Barack Obama has done nothing but love and care for this country, then you're messed up in your head.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen the moment where former President Obama, but always President Obama, presents Joe Biden with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Like, I don't know these two men. And the friendship of them, when he places that medal around his neck, emanates immediately from whatever screen you're watching it on. And it should make you wish that you have that sort of connection with somebody at some point.
Absolutely should. It should make you proud to be an American.
Yeah.
Should be, you see that type of friendship that they developed. And again, I don't know what kind of relationship they had before their 8 years of service together, but whatever happened during those 8 years, you could tell that they formed a genuine bond, a genuine respect for each other, and that they're both genuine good people who genuinely love the country at the end of the day. Whether they get to their goals differently than somebody else might be, I think their ultimate goal is to have America succeed and really legitimately put the country first, as opposed to someone who might be a little bit more on the narcissistic side and who continually says, I was listening to him today talking about like I beat this disease and I can do this and I can do that. And I don't think we would ever hear either one of those men say those things. I don't think we would ever. I can't in my mind think of a president.
No, because even the presidents that I protested against, like I felt this visceral reaction to George W. Bush. Like I don't think that there should be dynasties, and I don't like that, where I felt like he was just handed the presidency. And I've never attended more protests than I did anti-Iraq war protests. But when I always saw him speak, whether it be post 9/11 up to his last day as actually holding the Oval Office, like as misguided as I personally feel some of his decisions were, I was like, this is a dude who might have just been wrong, but clearly loves this country, clearly loves serving the people, and doesn't do it and would never do it just to divide us so he could get more power. He just made a lot of decisions that people disagreed with, but I don't think there was ever a moment where George W. Bush was like, I want to be punitive to people. I want to punish the blue states. I want to, do anything like that. For me, he was just wrong, but like, but on decisions, on policy decisions, and that's a different thing. And now I'm not gonna say that I miss him, but I realize that this is what an adult president that you disagree with looks like.
Yeah, yeah. This is, and what we're dealing with today is just something completely different.
It's very different.
Completely different. So
yeah, and that's why you don't see like the adult presidents from the past hanging out with this dude. Like it's a whole different office right now. So that's why we should cancel the debates forever, Terry.
Back around, way to round that back, man. Way to circle back on that, man.
There shall resolved. There should be no more debates. I remember I had to my one and only debate, and it was me versus me and another guy versus two girls that we both had massive crushes on, because this was freshman year in high school, and our debate subject was peremptory challenges are racist and should be abolished. And we were supposed to be in favor of getting peremptory challenges abolished. And it doesn't even matter what it is. But all I wanted to do was like lose with dignity. Because I thought at that point, like,
yeah, but
I haven't bested the girl, but I haven't come off like a fool either, you know?
I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
I'm not gonna win.
And then at the end be like, man,
Excellent.
Congrats to the other team. You guys were just
Just
absolutely amazing. Yeah.
So elegant. Can I
gosh, you're pretty. Yeah. All right, Terry, man. Well, have a great weekend.
Yes, sir.
And we'll see where the world sits. We're still in anarchist jurisdiction. I don't know if you know that. Maybe at some point we'll have that label removed, but I kind of hope we don't.
Yeah, we're running it for a while.
It's so much more fun looting for groceries than it is shopping for groceries. All right.
I have to try it out, see how that works.
Don't. No. If you need anything, just let me know. Okay.
I like the way you think.
Yeah. All right. See you, buddy. Have a great weekend.
Right,
thanks, everybody, for watching. Anarchist Jurisdiction. Share if you're seeing this anywhere. Always helps us out. And enjoy your night.